Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to be here. I feel like I've known you on the internet forever. I have one of my internet friends, one of my dear internet besties, internet, I don't know, internet friend, Alison Reeves here. Allison, can you introduce yourself? Just tell everybody real quick your little blurb. Just tell everybody who you are and what you do, the abbreviated version, because we'll get into all of it.
Yeah. Faith and I have had some parallels in our journey because we both were bloggers turned, marketing
We were
coaches.
like self-care personal development bloggers.
I know. Yeah. What happened? Wow. Where did that go? Yeah. Well, we tell yours too. I'm already derailing us. Okay, let me tell you who I am. Um, I'm Allison. My website's AlisonReeves.co. I've been blogging since 2011, and that launched my marketing career. And then I was started coaching in 2017, but I was in the real estate niche. And then when my personal blog started taking off in 2018, I started kind of organically getting more clients who were like other entrepreneurs. And so I pivoted away from real estate, which wasn't really like where my passion was anyway, and just started helping people like us make more money online. And that kind of eventually led to my journey into mindset because I realized at some point that strategy was not the end all be all. And then I learned about some of the limitations of mindset, and that led me on a whole other journey, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. So,
Yeah.
blogger turned business coach turned woo woo.
Well, it's so interesting to me because you were a very good business coach, I feel like, and a very good like marketing strategist. So Allison and I were like just catching up. I feel like we catch up on the podcast whenever we podcast or guest on each other's stuff. But we were talking before the show, and you were telling me I really want to go with the mindset and energetics, and that's really what I want to do. And I think I was surprised, I think, to hear that just because you are so good at the marketing stuff. So what kind of is pulling you into that direction? And then I think for everybody listening too, like how do you decide to do things like that? How do you decide you're making money, you're good at it, it's all working, right? And then you're like, I actually want to change directions. I think that could be a really hard decision to make. So I'd love to hear like how that process was for you.
Yeah, it's really scary to like make decisions or put your stake in the ground, or so I'm still kind of in this process, but I still love marketing and I still get a lot of clients from it. But one thing that was kind of interesting to me is that I don't do very much marketing anymore. So I have a blog for my business coaching now, and I get like maybe one new client a month just from the blog. And then I have like other agency clients that I get mostly through like referrals and relationships. And so what started making me think about like, what am I doing with my online brand? Like AlisonReeves.co, what is that website? What is this blog? And like my email list is getting larger, but there's a huge disconnect on the audience I'm growing on the internet and then where my money is coming from, because it's
Yeah.
not largely coming from the email list, although some of it is. Like the email list for me almost feels like more like a passion project. And so that's kind of what got me thinking, like we've been branding ourselves, me talking to myself, as like a business and marketing coach. But my energy, as far as my what I'm creating or what I feel creative and inspired around, is like not as much the marketing stuff, unless the marketing has some woo-woo in it. Um, and I don't even know how to like go through like without getting too deep into a rabbit hole. I've been working with the same spiritual coach for the last 2 years. And so really learning to lean more and more into my own intuition, into my own body, into my own heart and soul. And she asked me like, do you want to be like the front of the house or the back of the house? And the front of the house meaning like the personality, the
Oh, I
speaker, or
worked in restaurants. I know, girl.
yeah.
The front of the house is on the floor and the back of the house is in the kitchen.
So when she asked me this like 6 months ago, I was like, back of the house. And that's like what I've been doing. It's like lots of agency work. Like I have got a big local client that I do a lot of work for. And she asked me yesterday, and I was like, ooh, it's like front of the house. Like I don't want to be behind the scenes, like, and where I feel like my purpose and my vision is like speaking, retreats, And then the book that I published in June, Embodied Abundance, like that's the message I feel like needs to be in the world. And that's very different than like Alison Reeves, comma, business coach online, you know? I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers your question, but
I think that's like a good note to make for everybody listening is like you get to decide kind of how visible you are, especially once you have a reputation and have referrals and stuff. And so it can kind of be like your face everywhere and you're like the brand and you're like out there and you're on social media. And so people really love that. And there's also people that run brands where they're not like they're not personal brands. They're just brands where they're not in it at all. And neither one is right or wrong, and both of them can be profitable. So you guys have options, right? I think there's like, I don't know if you feel like this, but I think it's almost like in online business land, kind of like you should be out front. Did you have any of that kind of
oh
stuff come up?
yeah, I still get a lot of FOMO like around Instagram especially. And I think there's been people who have my best offers these days online are always like the lower cost things. And like the offers that I saw in marketing that people really like are like, you know, minimalist marketing, marketing without social, like because I'm making a lot of money now. And I
Yeah.
do use social media very well at all. Like Faith did not even know that I had a book launch because that's how bad of a marketer I am. But I feel like that's a luxury of leaning into alignment and
Mm.
then of building an audience over time, of being authentic over time, hopefully. Um, I'm really grateful for that.
I don't know if you feel like this, but I feel like as I get more established, as the audience gets kind of bigger and I have more connections, I feel like I have more options and like more luxury of being able to kind of, I guess, say no to things and ignore things and like do less of everything. Do you feel like that?
I do feel like that, but I also feel like what's interesting for me now is realizing that the clients that I'm getting that are making up most of my income, do they just come? Like they're not actually coming from my marketing efforts. Maybe like past efforts, like from the blogging. Um, but I think that's worth noting too, or something that I want to embody more is like the income doesn't come because of a huge audience, or I don't want that to become a limiting belief. And I think I've been growing this audience thinking like this will help me make so much more money. But then on paper, I'm like, well, I'm not trying that hard. Like to be
Like I'm
fair,
not really leveraging the audience I already have.
I'm growing an email list and I'm doing like an absolutely terrible job at like selling consistently or like being clear in messaging. Like I would not, if I had a client who was me, I'd be like, girl, what are you doing? Um, but I do think one thing I want to lean into and embody more and teach others is like my income is not coming from my marketing efforts. It's coming from the universe or what I put out there. Like one of the goals I had earlier this year is I have got this really big client and they make up like a lot of my income. And when I got that client, I was like, at the time they were making up like, I don't know, maybe 80% of my income for a couple months. And I was like, I just want to have enough other income to where if they dropped off the face of the earth one day, I would still have everything I need. And I didn't put any more effort into it than that, than just like setting that intention. And then my average income this year is a little bit more than double of what I get from that one client.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have those limiting beliefs. I definitely dabble in that too, where it's like you need to have a huge audience to have the level of success or the level of income that you want. Or I don't know, just and the effort too. I liked what you said about effort, that we have to put a lot of effort in front of a lot of people, and that's the way to make a lot of money. I think a lot of us, I feel like the industry kind of teaches all of us that, like when we come in, right? It's like you got to effort all the time. And I do think at the beginning there is a learning curve because I have a lot of baby like entrepreneurs and new people. And I remember that too. Like the learning curve is like real steep. Like you got to learn a lot of skills. So I guess in that way it's effort. Like you have to know how to do it to some extent, right?
Yeah.
Well, how do you find those two work together with like the effort? Because you do put some kind of effort in, right? And then like the receiving part and the alignment part.
Yeah, I definitely work a lot. I just feel like my I wouldn't tell someone to do what I'm doing with social in my email list, especially early on. It's like, it's just very haphazard. I feel like effort is easier. Maybe it doesn't feel like effort because I'm in alignment. So, like early on, I would join masterminds where almost every single one told me, mass DMs, like lots of conversations, post on social every day, join all the Facebook groups, try to scalp those Facebook groups to your own, like that's the strategy. And
I
that
forgot all about that. Oh my God. I'm really like
no, that was like my
flashbacks.
full-time job in 2020. And I actually got like beginning carpal tunnel from like messaging on my phone all the time like this. Um, but the effort that I put in now is like what feels good in my body. So like it doesn't feel good to proactively like reach out to people anymore. I will also say though, so there's like when I think about like minimalist marketing and just making sure I'm checking all the boxes, I'm joking that I'm like a shit marketer, but I do check those boxes. Like I do make sure I have a consistent thing that's growing my audience and
Hmm.
that when people get into my audience, I have something to sell them. And then
Yeah.
that happens on autopilot. And I also think that I don't want people to hear what I'm saying and think that like everything is always aligned and everything is always easy and great or it's wrong because I also think in business there's like phases where you have to hunt more and phases where you can benefit from the garden that you've built. And like
Yeah.
when you're starting, you have no garden. So you can only garden if you want to, but just know that you're not going to make money for a while. And hunting for me was like very unaligned, but it did work for making a lot of money early on. So
It's hard to shift out of that too, right? So I went through this where, I made my first 100,000 by, I always joke, I'm like, I made my first 100K by in the energy of like, I will be successful, God damn it. And like, and everyone can like screw off and this is just what's happening. And like, I'm making 100K and like, I don't care how hard I have to work and how crazy I make the team. And like, it just is what it is. Like, this is what's happening. And that worked for me, right? I made money doing that. But at a certain point, it's like the return on it diminished. So like the amount of effort to the return, like didn't continue to just grow and grow and grow, right? It was like I started to get burnt out. It was very stressful working for me. I had a VA that would come to work and cry every time she signed on because she was so stressed out. This is true. Because I was doing so much stuff. Like I was just like 100 miles an hour all the time. And it was hard for me to like shift out of that and like be like, okay, we have to do this sustainably and we have to receive what we've built. And like there was also points where I had, like you're saying, built the garden and it was like I had to learn how to be able to harvest it and enjoy it and like have the results I had worked so hard for. And it sounds silly, but it's like for me, that was like really hard to let go of like the hard work. Did you go through that before you got to this place you're at now?
yeah, for sure. I got so I think it's important. Like one thing you said that I relate to, I was going to ask you this, and then you answered it before I asked. And like, why did you stop that? And it's like, it stopped working because got burned out, wasn't aligned, market changed, whatever. I think I would have kept forcing the results if it had kept working. Like I would have just, I don't know. I say that, but then I literally was like, I cannot message one more person proactively. Like this just, it didn't feel good. And then a lot of people kind of ruined it by just there's too many scammy DMs these days.
Oh
But
yeah.
it was really painful to slow down. And it still is. Like there's phases where like I took a Wednesday off recently and I was like anxious a lot of that day. And I had to realize like I'm anxious because I'm used to working a pretty consistent schedule and I'm like resting. And that feels like I'm like, what is this in my body? And then what does this need? Just like resourcing whatever I need. But it was really hard. And I also had to, for me, my energy gets like really, my sales and it's hard for me to sell when I'm not in the right energy. So when I was like anxious about changing things, but I literally couldn't do it the same way anymore. I also was like unable to sell because I was anxious about changing things. So I had to go through this like tearing down of everything and period of rest before I could build it back up again. And that for me resulted in like almost like a little break and like a drop in income, but it was like the best thing that I ever did. Um,
Yeah, I think that's important too. And I like that you're transparent about that too, because I think one of the myths that I hate in this industry is just that like every month is a bigger month and the business just goes up and up and up and up. And it's like we're running normal businesses and every business fluctuates. Like not every business is just growing quarter after quarter. There's lots of businesses that grow fast and then stop or go up and down. And like all of that is normal. And so I think it's important to normalize those dips in income as just normal business stuff. I want to ask you before I forget. You're really into the embodiment and I've heard you say like a couple of times like dropping into my body. I want to hear your tips because I am someone who's like very in my brain all the time. Matt says this about me all the time. I'm like very like in my brain. I'm not very connected to my body. I want to hear like your tips for people listening. Like what would be your tips to start dropping into your body and like following your intuition in business if you're used to being living in your brain all the time.
yeah, yeah. Two things, two tips. And before I say the tips, I'll say for people listening, like, what does that mean? Why should you care? And like dropping into your body. And it's like if you think about like how much space your brain takes up and versus how much space your nervous system takes up, which goes through your whole entire body. Like we forget that our nervous system is part of our processing.
Hmm.
And we also forget how little, how few data points we can consciously process. So if you can learn to drop into your body, you get access to tens of thousands of more data points that you're not consciously thinking of. So two,
That's so interesting. I've never thought about that. I've never heard anybody explain that before.
yeah, well, that's like I learned that in NLP is very much like masculine heady training, but that's
Hmm.
where I learned that from. Is like your subconscious has like so much more information than your conscious, but your nervous system too is like it just takes up so much more space. Like, well, I gotta listen. There's like things going on over here and over here. So dropping into your body, two things. Like one is I couldn't feel anything when I first started learning somatics. I have what's called a somatic coaching certification. And I took that intuitively knowing that that was like the next step for me in manifesting consistently. But when we first doing exercise, I was like, I feel nothing. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it just all felt like bullshit to me. But I just knew that it was what I was supposed to do, so I kept going. So just know that when you're practicing this, you might be like, I don't know what she's talking about. And then keep trying because it'll come. So the two exercises that will be really helpful. One is just feeling and then verbalizing out loud. So I would actually recommend doing this with like your voice memos so you can listen to it back, even though it might be awkward. But I would
No,
just
I
say,
hate listening to my own voice. I'm like, what a nightmare.
yeah, it's just set a timer for 2 minutes and
Okay.
close and verbalize, even if you don't record it, verbalize everything you are feeling. So try to get out of the thoughts. So literally like I'm sitting cross-legged in my chair. I'm kind of aware of this microphone a few inches from my face. I felt awkward about talking about the microphone, so I started moving my fingers. It's a little cold in my office and letting space be there. So I'm like, I'm talking a lot because I'm like talking to you, but let the space be there if you don't have anything to say, but just going back to physically what you're feeling and that you'll just practice. Like, what am I feeling right now? So that's one thing. And the second thing, which is really fun and relevant to entrepreneurs or anyone who's looking to make a decision is writing down on a piece of paper like a bunch of things that are true and a bunch of things that are definitely not true.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good one.
and then go away. So write down these things, go take a walk, come back to the list, and then read each thing out loud and see in what it feels like in your body when something is true and when something is false.
Mm.
Because the true will feel different than false. And then you can use that same process to decide what to do in business. So like, I'm going to sell this for 97. I'm going to sell this for 27. I'm going to call it X, Y, and Z. I'm going to call it A, B, and C. And then seeing which of those feels like yes in your body, and which feels like no, or true and false.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me too, because I think about I haven't made that many bad investments. I feel like most things I've done have been exactly what I needed to do. But when I look at the couple that I made, and the ones I did make that were bad were like, they were significant investments. They unfortunately were not like $5 investments. They were like $25,000 investments. But when I look back at that, I did feel in my body like that it was not right. And one of the signs I think for me too is like my brain will get really chattery, like trying to like override that feeling in your body, right? Where it's like trying to make it feels like it's trying to justify things and make it okay and make it right when it's not aligned.
Yeah, I can feel it. Like it feels like this. It's like my like fingers, if you're just listening, or like going all over the place, like with this grippy feeling
Yeah.
instead of a settled feeling. I still want to do a summit, and I was planning over the first quarter of next year, but I was just feeling all this constriction around it. And then I talked it out with Kelsey, who you know,
Yeah.
obviously.
Kelsey's on my team. For those of you that don't know, she's the best. We love her.
We love Kelsey. So I was talking it out loud with her, and I realized like what I was feeling in my body was like I felt this expansiveness and rest and release at the idea of just removing the date from it. So like I'm still gonna do something, but like it's not at this time period. And then I was like, oh, that feels so good. Instead of like, "Oh, I really want to do a summit. I've wanting to do it forever, and I've already got a couple people committed." And I'm like, no, I'm not doing it right now. Feels awesome. Feels like rest, quiet, no chatter.
What would you say to people that are like new in business and they're like, I don't have any business experience and I've never done this. So how can I like trust my intuition if you're doing something you've never known or you've never done before?
Yeah, that's a good question too, because again, there's like sometimes where we have to do things that are maybe less aligned because we want certain results. So like it may not always feel like rest in your body. And I think part of is like learning to trust your intuition when you're new is letting yourself make mistakes and then learning embodiment early. So
Mm,
if you don't know what yes and no feels like, or true and false, or like how you're feeling in your body, if you don't know that at all and you're just kind of running and running and running, you're not really giving yourself a chance. So like if you can practice feeling sooner rather than later, and then also just gonna like in general, like I want people to hear that they can trust themselves. So when you hire coaches, like when you're joining Faith's mastermind, you're hiring her as like a guide, you're paying for the community, but you're not like hiring someone who is better than you. Or like I felt like I kept outsourcing my power in masterminds where I was like, they know better than me. I don't know the answers. I have to pay money if I need to know something. So like start from a place that you can trust yourself, let yourself make mistakes and learn to feel early on.
yeah, we teach it in the mastermind. I'm always like, the best ideas for your business come from your brain. And so, like, my job as a coach is just to help you access the genius in your own brain, right? And I am someone too, I'm not a coach also that only does mindset. I'll tell you like what I think. And if there's strategy things, like, I'll tell you, like, I have experience marketing and I'm happy to tell whoever those things. Cause I've had coaches that just like, you ask them a question and they just answer with more questions and you're like, this is helpful to like an extent, but also like
Just tell me what to do.
tell me what you would do with this launch. Like I want to know. I do think that's like use I'm like different, I think, from a lot of the mindset coaches in that way, where I'm like, well, I'm gonna tell you what I think and like but then I'm gonna try and also pull out like what you actually want to do and what's actually best for your business, which and then like I'm saying, those decisions have to come from your brain, right? Like no one knows. That was the big lesson for me too, is like no one knows my business and my community and me better than me. Like no one knows like what's best for Faith Mariah brand more than Faith Mariah, even if they've made a lot more money than me. And that was a very expensive lesson for me to learn.
Yeah.
So you guys could take that and it hopefully it'll save you $25,000.
Or more. Could be upwards of six
Could
figures.
be unlimited amounts of money.
Listening to this podcast alone could save you. This is a very valuable podcast for everyone out there.
I want to hear the process about your book. How did you know that you were supposed to write the book? What did that feel like?
Gosh. So again, it just came from like listening to intuition. It was like one step at a time. So I almost feel like when there was a book, it was like, how did this get here? Like, I don't remember doing this. So I self-published a book in June of 2024, and I knew that I wanted to write the book. So what I felt like, and this is true probably for all of us, like we usually create the things that we wanted for ourselves that didn't exist, that we couldn't find.
Mhm.
It's like, where is this? Or like, I took this program, but like this thing was missing, or like this was a great program, but when I did it this way, I got really good results. And now I want to teach like this strategy. Anyway, so this book for me is like the painful lessons I learned of why like manifesting wasn't working for me. So I
Mhm.
kept getting stuck in these like anxiety cyclones. And a lot of it for me was around like money and safety, which I didn't know at the time. But when I first learned about mindset in 2019, I had like incredible results by just mastering mindset. And then I would hit this wall, and it would be like, the coach would tell me like, we'd work through some limiting beliefs and write some affirmations. And it would be like, the energy of the advice was like, get your shit together. Like after that
Believe
initial
harder.
learned already. And that maybe it was just me also like shitting on myself. But I knew there was something missing. And then what helped reinforce that there was something missing was me seeing that pattern in clients. It was like they do this mindset work, they have amazing results, and they hit these walls. And it's like the mindset work is not getting over the wall. There's like something else going on. And so I I learned about somatics through, like, I just had heard about it somewhere, which is somatics is like a body-based mindset therapeutic approach, but it's like leveraging your nervous system to get more information about what's going on in your brain. And I just intuitively knew that was the next thing. So I found a certification program. And that for me, that year being in that program was one of the most painful years of my life. It was when I bottomed out in my business, but I was like learning all this stuff at the same time. And in like manifesting and energetics, you have to be able to like manage emotions. And like, because you are attracting, like, not to say that if you're anxious, you'll never be able to make a lot of money, because you can and you will, but just that manifesting does require like energy management, and energy management requires regulating your nervous system. And I had never heard anybody talk about that. I had never heard any of the like 7, 8 figure mindset coaches talking about emotional regulation and nervous system regulation as a really important component to manifesting. And so that's what the book is about. It's like
That's
it's a
awesome.
holistic, inclusive approach to manifesting. That's like, um, yeah, I'll stop there.
Well, a book is like a huge time commitment, I feel like, right? To write a book. Was your brain chattery at all about like this is a waste of time, or we should be doing other things in the business, or there's things that would get other results, or were you just like decided and you just knew and you just followed through on it?
It didn't, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but it was not a huge like time suck for me. Which- And I think I'm very productive and prolific, but the other thing, and this is like if you want to write a book, this could be a really great tip for you, is
Yeah.
that I also have a blog. And so like when I was putting together, like I put together, you know, webinars on kind of this framework as I was like thinking about like what is it, like I was able to manifest all this money and it felt easy. My business is something I enjoy again. Like, how did that happen? And then wanting to like document it. So I did that through free trainings and lives and whatever, but I also did that through blogging. So I was like, I want to know, I feel like embodiment and law of attraction are really important. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that. I'm going to research it and write about like how I think that's working. And that's a huge section in the book. And then like mindset is like I've developed like these wealth wounds, and like the wealth wounds, the antidotes, and like what are the main mindset issues that people have, and like what is the opposite of that that will help them heal that heal that wound, ease that pain. And so that's like a huge section of the book. But it just kind of started with like, I want to document what's happening to me because I feel like I want to remember so I can do it again. And I want to teach other people. And then I would blog about it. And so by the time I decided to actually write the book, I had like my goal was 40,000 words. And I don't remember what I got to. I think it was around that. But by the time I decided to write the book and I put together all these things that I already had, it was like over 20,000 words already.
Yeah. It's a really good example too of like how these skills stack, I feel like in business, where it's like you have the writing skill and then discipline and you have the frame, you put it into frameworks and you've taught it. And then it's like all the pieces are there. And I really think those skills, the skills sometimes can be painful to learn in the business. It can be painful to learn how to write if you're not a writer or how to teach if you've never taught. And like, but I think there's skills that can do so much more for us than we ever even see, right? Did you ever see yourself writing a book before? Or
No, I never saw, I don't even know how, like, I don't remember the moment when I was like, I'm gonna write a book. I think it was like, I might want to write a book. And then I like put together all the pieces I already had. And I was like, oh shit, I kind of like already have a book. And then I started putting more of those pieces together. And so like another challenge that I did was I bought Leonie Dawson's like write a book in 40
yeah,
days.
I love Leonie.
I love her. And that course, like I didn't watch hardly any of the videos. But what that did was it just gave me a goal of writing, like if I can write 2,000 words a day, then I'll have like the basis for editing in like a very short period of time. So that helped me too. Like if I could write 2,000 words in like a couple hours, I don't know. Yeah, it just came together.
Yeah, and it also kind of takes away that belief of like it has to be hard and take a long time, right? Where it's like write a book in 30 days and you're like, oh, well, it's not really going to take all that long,
Yeah.
right? Like,
And
I
for
mean,
people
we used to write
listening,
1,000 word blog posts all the time, I'm sure.
yeah, anyone who teaches or coaches or has a service-based business, like you already have these frameworks in your brain, and a framework makes a really good book outline.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah.
I have another question I want to ask you, and it's derailing from this conversation. But I hear a lot of manifestation teachers talk about embodying your future self. I've done that a lot in my business, and it's worked really well for me. Like thinking about like if I already had those results and had that life, like how would I feel and what would I do? But I think it can be really difficult to try to embody a result that you've never had, right? So I see a lot of new, especially if it's something totally different than what you've done before. So I see a lot of new business owners struggle with this where they're trying to embody, like, I'm a coach and what it would feel like to have clients, or I am an online business owner and what it would feel like to have a successful business. But it's almost like, I think, hard if it's something you've never done before. Do you have tips for like how you can embody something like that? Or do you teach it like you just stay in the present and like call it to you?
I do think staying in the present is extremely underrated. So I
Yeah.
think finding things to be grateful for now is one of the most powerful ways to manifest, even if what you have now is not obviously what you want, especially if you don't have enough money to buy the things that you need,
Mm.
right? It can be hard to find to be grateful, but you can find things to be grateful for. Like there's so much in nature that feels abundant that is everywhere that can serve us if you like really lean into it. Um, so huge lesson there. So that's the first thing is like, what can I be grateful for today? And then like embodying the future version of yourself or like the things that you want in the future, that's going to depend on your personality.
Yeah.
So you have to think about, are you a specific manifester or a general manifester? So you have to think about if you're a specific manifester or a general manifester. So specific manifestors are going to be like, I want to make like $100,000 and 99 cents every single month. And I'm gonna like live in this type of house. And that feels good in their body. Like to think about those specifics. And
Mhm.
like maybe you've manifested something specific before. Like I'm gonna go to the store and I'm gonna get a pink pair of sneakers for under $50, and then you do. And that feels really good to you. I'm a general manifester. So if I get too specific in what I want, I feel constriction and stress in my body.
Yeah, I
So
think I do too.
like, yeah, knowing what feels good in your body can help you. But then if you don't know how to embody that future version of yourself, another exercise I like to do is like, you don't have to figure it out. So you might even think about like, I'll do a visualization where I think about if I had $100,000 per month, like what might I be doing? Like I might be like, I'm like teaching a retreat in a luxury resort and I'm wearing a flowy dress and like having a martini or something like and then I think about what might that person be like stressed out about. And then I think like what would bother her or like what does she need? And like that version of me, she's busy. She like she loves being home and she's traveling a lot. Like what does she need? Like she needs support. So, for example, if that's like what the future version of myself might need, then to help me manifest those results, instead of just being like, I'm going to act like a rich person, I'll be like, how can I look for more support so that I'm creating a safe place for the future version of myself to land? Does that
Oh,
make
that's
sense?
a really good. I love that. I've never heard anybody explain it like that. So that's an awesome exercise. I'm definitely going to try that out.
Mirror fixable. It's like you're, and then that works really well for me because it's like, it's not super focused on the bank account or doing things a specific way. It's just like knowing that these results might come. And then that's a way to like act as if that's like very manageable. Because like another way that I could act as if is like buying a really nice car, but like not always the most responsible thing to do. So there's all these other ways we can like act as if that are more manageable and also good for your nervous system.
Yeah, and then checking in with your body, right? Because if you're spending more than you're comfortable with to act as if, usually in your body, there's going to be something that's like a no for most of us, right? Like, I don't like this.
Some crazy people are like, yes, and it works for them, but most of us know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most of us would be like, oh God. I get stressed about spending money on things I have money for. I'm like, oh man. So I can't imagine that. You have to tell everybody, where can we find you? Where can we get your book? I know you said you're not on social media, but like, where's the best place for us to stalk you on the internet and be
Yeah.
fans of you? Tell us
I
how do we be fans of Allison these days? Tell me.
I am on social. I just don't post that often, but I do email my list like every Monday without fail. So if you go to AlisonReeves.co, that's like the easiest thing to do. And then the book is linked in the main menu. The way to join the newsletter will just pop right up. Um, YouTube is the like if you are like really into social and you want to see where I'm posting on social, that's probably where I'm the most consistent, but that could change at any moment. So I would just go join go to my website, and the book is linked right there in the header menu, and you can join my newsletter. And that's where I'm the most consistent without fail is the newsletter.
Yeah, and if you guys really want to work with Allison, probably the best place to start is the book, right? Because you're gonna get like your framework and
It's a super affordable, tangible thing. So I mean, it's 16.99 on Amazon, and it has, I would say, 80% of the information that's in a $300 course that I have. And the course obviously has much more like video and journaling, and it's a very accessible way to get this framework, which I feel like is a really important framework.
yeah, so you guys should definitely go buy the book. Definitely get on Allison's email list. Go stalk her, be fans of hers, be super fans of hers. Thank you so much for sharing all this. I know it's going to help so many people, and I just really appreciate the work that you're doing and you being willing to share it with us. It was really special.
Good to see you.
Thank you.